Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for the fourth session of the Light Wellness Experience Workshop this year. For those of you who are rejoining us, I want to thank you for following along throughout the year. And for anyone new who is joining us, I am very much looking forward to your participation and getting to know you. If you are watching inside the private Facebook group, please know that I will be your personal concierge throughout the event. You can use the group and private messaging or even the wall to engage in whatever conversation you'd like, consultative, educational, and just get all your questions answered. And for those of you who are watching the recordings on our YouTube channel, thank you so much for kind of watching with us and checking us out and seeing what it's all about. My name is Regina Lausell. I am the CEO of the Light Vitality Group. The Light Vitality Group is a collaborative platform for light wellness support. We bridge the efforts of interdisciplinary experts across different trades who touch on and are either stakeholders or shareholders in the light wellness market. What does that mean? We're talking about lighting designers, manufacturers, architects, user experience specialists, one of which you're actually going to be meeting today, trend experts, scientists, you name it, we talk to them, city planners, local planners, and we try to get all of the efforts that are being made in order to help educate on circadian health and light's impact on it, right? Out to communities, to business owners, to individuals, so that you can make the most of your lifestyle under light. So if you're joining us today, we have a few tools that we are going to be using throughout the workshop in order to help you with the process. So many of us, why the workshop? Why are we doing this? Because there is a lot of information out in the world right now about light and its impact on our health and our well-being. Some of it is very dense. Some of it is kind of glossed over, and you'd never really know who to trust, or sometimes it can just be so confusing because you're inundated with information. This workshop is meant to break down some of that complex information, make it more relatable, more understandable, and give you a means to be able to utilize the tools and resources you already have at your disposal to enhance your lifestyle under light. Now, particularly, as you'll see as we flip through our resources, that we're going to primarily be working with daylight. Now, you will also notice that if you have your workbook, right, that the workbook and the guidelines within are tailored for a typical day active schedule. That means it's day to night. You wake up in the morning, you live your life through the day, you go to sleep at night. If you are joining us and have an adjusted work schedule or some sort of complex time of day schedule, then feel free to reach out to me personally, and we can talk about what those needs are and what your schedule is, and we'll figure out a solution and a set of guidelines that are more personalized for you. So that said, we have a few resources that are available. As I mentioned, we have the workbook. Inside, you'll see on page 1 the recommended number of sleep hours. Now, these come directly from the National Sleep Foundation. The National Sleep Foundation provides a wealth of information on sleep health, sleep hygiene, recommendations, tips, tools, and resources, educational articles. They're a great resource for you to tap into if you're trying to learn more specifically about sleep health. So, whatever age bracket you are, or if you have family members or friends or anyone who might be relying on you or someone you want to share this information with, maybe a coworker, right? Look at what age bracket you fall in and how many recommended hours of sleep you're going to need. We'll be able to use that just as kind of your reference throughout the week as you try to catch up on your sleep and keep going. On page 2, we have the Light Wellness Guidelines, a big part of this workshop in the reason why we have this introduction on day 1 and why we start this workshop on Friday at the end of the week is to give you an opportunity to look at your home, your office space, look at the environments that you frequent the most throughout your life and see what type of lighting you have. What is your lifestyle under light currently? Right? What access to daylight do you have? Is your daylight coming from the north, south, east, west? Right? Do you only have access to overhead lights and bright electric lights at night? Do you have enough access to daylight in the early morning hours? So these guidelines give you a frame of reference to see how you can apply different natural daylight and electric light strategies into your existing environments and see what types of lighting may need to be tweaked in those environments as you learn more throughout the event. So as you can see, if you're following along, the goal is to support your circadian health through its realignment to natural daylight by tailoring your life under light to receive the right kinds of light at the right times of day. Why is this important? This is because, as you will learn, the 5 most recognized pillars of wellness all stand on the critical foundation of circadian health. What does that mean? Circadian rhythms. Our body has a whole host, just so many functions and rhythms, biofunctions that are contingent on each other, right? They work with each other between day and night in order to make sure that all of these very important and complex systems in our body are able to function and do so at the proper times. And if they get out of line or out of alignment with each other, then it can create a whole host of health issues. We are going to be talking more about that tomorrow on day 2 when we look specifically at no circadian health, right? So what else are we going to learn? Well, we're going to learn how circadian rhythms are activated and regulated by different kinds of light based on time of day. And we're going to learn how to identify which spaces in the built environments you occupy that can support or hinder your circadian health, right? So day 1, we're going to talk about, or day 2, tomorrow, we're going to be talking about no circadian health, the importance of circadian health to your overall wellness, and how circadian rhythms work with each other to keep our health and key biofunctions aligned. Key biofunctions like heart health, gut health, hormonal responses, primarily our sleep-wake cycles, right? Even physical recovery and immune system responsiveness, right? So these are all critical functions of circadian rhythms. But we're going to learn more about that in depth on day 2. On day 3, we're going to be talking about no light wellness, right? The importance of circadian health to wellness and the impact natural white daylight has in supporting it. And we're going to be talking very specifically about a very specific range of visible white daylight, and you're going to learn all about it on that day. We are going to talk about on day 4, no positioning, the importance of where your lighting, your body, and your environment are positioned to receive the most impact healthy light has to offer. Simply put, where you are matters. Right? And on day 5, we're going to talk about know your goals, the importance of setting wellness goals to recognize a return on investment, a value of investment, and what even just a 1% return means to you as an individual. On day 6, we are going to be discussing light wellness solutions for small business owners. And on day 7, we are going to have an interdisciplinary interview or an interview with an interdisciplinary representative who is a sleep psychologist and a professor. He's an expert in sleep health, Mr. Michael Gradisar. And but that brings me to today's discussion, where we have another new resource that is available to you throughout this workshop. In addition to the National Sleep Foundation, in addition to the workbook we've provided to you, in addition to the articles you can find on Light Vitality Group's website, www.lightvitalitygroup.com, go to resources, learn literature. We are now able to help you with your light wellness journey and light wellness transformation through the use of the Circadian app. The Circadian app was created by a company called Circadian Ltd, And it was co-founded by Mr. Bastian Groiss, who is going to be joining me right now to speak to you and tell you a little bit more about the app in detail and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And yeah, just share a little bit of his story about why he chose this industry, why he's so invested in light wellness, and we can have a little back and forth about what we love about light and health so much and circadian rhythms. So with no further ado, please give a hearty welcome, drop a comment, let him know that you appreciate him being here. This is Mr. Bastian Groiss. Hi.
Hi, Regina.
Hi. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure. It's one of my favorite topics. Light has been since many years, so I love to talk about it. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, clearly, because I downloaded it about 3 weeks now, I believe, and I remember thinking to myself, I want to say probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I wish that there was an app that would track all of these different things and built into it. And I was like, yeah, maybe one day LVG will make it. And I was like, I really hope someone else does though. And then you and I connected about a month or so ago, or maybe 2 months ago. And yeah, and I downloaded it and I've been using it, and I think it's fantastic. It tracks so much of the circadian process and gives a very clean, simple interface for you to be able to look at as a visual reference. It gives you the options for different notifications based on different types of, biofunctions and environmental cues. So I will let you talk more about the app specifically, why you created it, and more about how to use it. I think everyone who's going to be joining us, it's a great tool to use, especially in this first week, as everyone is learning about circadian health, and they're learning how to apply all of these light solutions and light strategies into their life. This is going to be a wonderful resource for people to have as a visual reference. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, I mean that's why I created it. I didn't set out to create an app. I had 4 or 5 years ago. I just noticed that I was saying to myself, like, I'm tired, like over and over again, and it didn't get better over time. It got worse, and after a couple of years of that, I just had enough, and I just needed to make a change somehow. Didn't know how. I looked like most people do initially for nutritional changes, diet changes. Went down that path. Actually got some good results from it, but I wanted kind of more. I was kind of, I kind of tasted something, and I felt more vital and felt more energized, and I wanted more of it. And I can't quite remember how I came across circadian rhythms and how I came across light, but it really struck a chord. It's just one of these times in my life where I knew I stumbled upon something really important. Yeah. And it specifically kind of stood out to me because I hadn't heard about it before, and I didn't hear other people talk about it. No one knew about it. Everyone I kind of talked about it, like, yeah, I don't know. So it was like, okay, people need to know about this. But I didn't actually start there. It was more like something in me was so curious that I followed that curiosity, and it led me down the rabbit hole of circadian rhythms and light in particular. For a few years, and I did, looked at all the research papers, not all, some of them, there's so many, and read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, and just try to piece together what all of that means on a practical kind of daily level. Like, how do I actually apply all that stuff? And light in particular is so complex. One of my favorite quotes is from Einstein. He said, "For the rest of my life, I will contemplate what life is." And that kind of points to the complexity of light, and that we actually don't have a clue. Yeah. We kind of think we do. We know a lot about light. But, just that it can be a wave, and it can be a particle, and just on the quantum physics level, which is way beyond my head, Don't even try to go there. But it just shows that we know so little about it, and at the same time, just putting it into perspective that light, or natural light, the sunlight in particular, is the driver of life, and it is the regulator of life. Like every organism on this planet arranges its biofunction and its behavior according to the day and night cycle. We are diurnal animals, whatever rodents are nocturnal animals, and there's a whole range in between. But every organism basically orients its functioning according to that cycle, to the daily cycle and to the seasonal cycle.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we seem to be the only species who kind of seems to think that we can get away with not doing that. And I think it slowly comes out more and more that is a strong kind of fallacy.
Oh yeah,
we are paying the price of that behavior, and so that's where I kind of eventually kind of thought, how do I reach people with that? How can I bring that information out more? And eventually the idea of the app came into my mind. And basically what we try to do is to provide education in a really kind of well-curated form, so that it creates more awareness around the importance of circadian rhythm in life.
You definitely did that.
Yes, right anyway. And then, okay, how do I apply that to my life? And what it means in a nutshell is really, how do I go back to a more biological schedule rather than an artificial kind of societal schedule? And that's kind of a challenge for, quite an individual challenge that everyone has, and how they can make that transition back to a more biological schedule to support your functioning in an optimal way. But that's what the app is about, and where people want to start, whether they want to start with, I look at the sleep piece, or I look at the light piece, or I look at when I eat and shrink my eating window, or have more consistency in my movement. That's completely individual where people want to tackle this. But the app is really there for people to kind of support that and give them a framework of how an ideal circadian day would look like. And then, okay, what can I do? What can't I do? Where do I start? And why should I care about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great breakdown of, how to look at the app and what types of features are included inside of it. One of the things that you had mentioned was, you started your journey, your circadian journey, kind of from a nutrition standpoint, from nutrition and gut health. Okay, I'm going to change something in my eating habits, or, maybe it was your meal timing, maybe it was the food itself. One of the things that is so difficult about circadian health, and I think it's one of the reasons why so little is known about it in the mass, communities, rather than on just a very professional or scientific level, is because of how complex it is, because of how many different areas of our life and our body are, kind of interconnected, and how much it touches on it. There's just too much, right? We all have these crazy schedules that we're juggling day in and day out. And as you have mentioned in some way, we have not developed a social structure or even an environmental infrastructure that supports circadian health. If anything, we've created lifestyles and environments around our lifestyles that hinder circadian health. And we didn't realize it until now, right? We didn't realize until now what we were doing and what we were taking away from our bodies in the advent of electric light. And now that we know, it's time to get that back. And I think that there's so many individuals who just don't have the time or the headspace with the complexities of life to understand how the complexities of their bodies need to work together in order to make sure that they're well. Right? It's not just about what you eat and when you eat. It's not just about how you exercise and when you exercise. It's not just about what your social connections and your, personal relationships are. Our gut, our physical, our mental, emotional health, these are all pillars of wellness that lay on the foundation of circadian rhythms, and light being that critical component, that main, kind of marker that facilitates a circadian response, right, is so little known. And so it's nice to see on your app that now that everyone now has access to, hopefully throughout the duration of this workshop and beyond, right? Because I think that this is a tool that should be used in everybody's life every single day because of how complex circadian rhythms are. But I'm going to hold it up. I have it open on my phone so people can kind of get a little taste. You can see light, dark, even UVA and UVB, sleep, eating and fasting, exercise, peak cognition, right? So you get to put in where you're located, and then you get to kind of choose around the different times that or am I going to eat within this 10 to 12 hour window or 14-hour window? Am I going to get a light break every 20 minutes, every 60 minutes, every 180 minutes, right? It gives you all of these opportunities to be able to look at and build in these complex layers of circadian health that all work together in order to help us be well and to make sure that we are performing at our physical, mental, and emotional peaks. And when we throw off one layer of that complex system, it becomes a domino effect. This layer gets, messed up, and then this layer winds up kind of, faltering, and then the next layer. And just like a building, right, that has a foundation, if you get a crack in the foundation, the whole building doesn't come down at once, right? You have the foundation, and then you have the pillars, and eventually the cracks in the foundation are going to spread to the pillars, and then there might be a stress fracture that sends more cracks throughout the pillars, and eventually you have a derelict building, and then the whole building is coming down. And that's kind of what happens to our bodies, right? We start to think, we go off the how many times does a doctor say, oh, that's just your body getting old? It's not just your body getting old. It's your circadian rhythms being misaligned and your body not being able to communicate with itself so that it knows how to fight off germs and pathogens. So it knows when to digest and when to be hungry. So it knows when to release, the proper hormones or hold off on releasing hormones, right? And again, we will talk more about all of that in depth tomorrow during session 2 of No Circadian Health. But I think that's just one of the wonderful aspects of the Circadian app, is that you can see all of those layers of, physiological health and biofunctions in one area, overlapping each other and around a clock that tells you, hey, based on where you are and based on the parameters that you've set for your lifestyle, this is when, you're going to have the most cognition and when you should, probably be doing kind of mental work, right? Or putting the most effort into mental work. This is when you should be performing physical exercise. This is the range that you should be eating in. This is the range you should be fasting in. This is the range where you should be getting this type of light or that type of light, because it all works together in a very complex system called circadian health. And I think you've done a wonderful job, being able to put that into this application and make it personable or personalized for people's lifestyles. So I really hope that everyone takes advantage of your app and uses it throughout the workshop. Can you tell me a little bit about the tips and tools? You said it gives you a means to be able to give you support as you're walking through these different biofunctions. I love them. I could get lost in it and spend hours looking at all of the tips and tools and looking at the articles. But do you want to share a little bit about how you set that up?
Yeah, I think what people tend to forget is that one of the key driver for your rhythm is when you get up and when you go to bed. Mm-hmm. Right. So when you choose to wake up determines when kind of your peak cognition is, when you kind of should go to bed, when you should kind of eat, when you should kind of exercise. So it's a crucial point, and I guess one of the difficulties again in today's lifestyle that people have, and in our busy world, is that we have kind of an erratic rhythm, and that we kind of constantly change our rhythm based on maybe a meeting or based on a flight people need to take or whatnot, or a birthday party that runs late, and that can all happen, and there's ways to mitigate that. But the primary focus, really, if the primary focus is your health, then the aim should be to have less and less of these, I guess, you could call it almost like jet lags, because that's what it is. When you sleep in the weekend, for example, which is one of the most common things people do, staying up late on the weekend and then sleeping in the next morning, and that's jet lag. It's called social jet lag, but it is effectively jet lag. And you're throwing your biological clocks into a different time zone. And then you try to really adjust that a few days later. And there's overwhelming amounts of research on shift work, not only on shift work, but shift work is one of the best examples. You see that in shift workers, you see it in night owls, that their health is just proportionally just way worse than people who don't have such a rhythm. So that's kind of probably the most, I guess, important kind of cornerstone, really, to try to keep the same rhythm every day. And then the other notion is shifting that rhythm slightly with the seasons. And that will be more pronounced if you are in a more extreme, southern or, southern hemisphere kind of high latitude. If, let's say in summer, there's 8 hours of daylight, or that's 12 hours of daylight, and then in winter it's 8. Well, that should be reflected ideally in your sleep and wake cycles, and also in your behavior. And we can see that in nature quite clearly, that in spring there's usually the reproductive phase and the blossoming and the growing, and then summer is the maturing, and then the harvesting and all of that. So, and then in winter it all goes more into hibernation and slows down. And ideally that kind of rhythm is reflected in our life as well. And that's also something we try to do in the app, because the sleep you refer to, the hours of sleep we have should be adjusted in the seasons and along with the activity. And there's actually a really interesting study that they did on 3 indigenous tribes, where they looked at that, and they were living outside pretty much naturally without any artificial light, and their sleep changed with the seasons naturally, and with the temperature naturally. More in winter, less in summer, but the wake times didn't really shift. Right, they're all kind of rose, kind of usually an hour before sunrise. And that kind of stayed pretty much stable throughout the year. The sleep time adjusted a little bit, but the time of rising stayed the same. So again, just considering that notion of adjusting our lifestyle with the seasons according to the light cycles is something we have forgotten. Yeah, and it's in general, it's interesting. We always talk about diet, but there's a light diet as well, and we are completely unaware of the light diet. And I think people have more heard about the epigenetic side of things versus the genetic side of things. But again, it's becoming clearer and clearer that our environment and the way we live and what we surround ourselves with switches on and off our genes.
Yeah.
So, and really that, again, brings home the importance of light and the right light nutrition.
Yeah.
And if we don't have an awareness of that, it's almost like impossible to get back to wellness, particularly if you want to reverse disease or want to prevent disease kind of long term, because as you said, it's almost like you can look at health as a balance between damage and repair. Yeah, because obviously our cells kind of break down, they need to be repaired. There's cellular damage, oxidative stress that happens naturally.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, to the degree we can repair that damage, we are well. To the degree we don't do that, or we can't do that, or we interfere with that process, the quicker the breakdown and the disease will occur. And that's really what we're seeing in society.
Yeah. The lack of recovery.
The lack of recovery and the almost like the increased kind of breakdown of the human body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We say it's interesting, right? I'm sure people who are joining us and listening to this, who this is kind of their first exposure to these types of conversations, they say, oh, it's interesting that that's happening. But from our standpoint, we're like, it's not interesting, it's understandable, because again, we have created a lifestyle that is so dependent on electricity, right? We've created environments that, dig deeper and deeper into the core of a building, and we only have so much perimeter, so much space to have windows and access to daylight. And sometimes it's not always, it's not always planned or programmed for, for probably unhealthy individuals versus individuals who might have, more access to kind of the health solutions, right? Not to stereotype, but just to say that's kind of what happens, right? We've got executives in corner offices who are making a ton of money, and then we have, the minions in the core of the building who are or working in the basement or something, who don't have access to light, and are probably making much less than the executives, and so they have less access to certain healthcare or health solutions or wellness options, right? So we're seeing just kind of this breakdown in humanity, not just in one society over another. We're seeing a breakdown in humanity because we are all getting so sick because we no longer have the type of access to natural light that we used to. We no longer have the social schedules and social structures that gave us opportunities to be outside for extended periods of time or during the earliest hours of the day like we used to. Now we have shift workers, right? Like we said, shift workers are one of kind of the most adversely affected, markets or demographics, if you will, of individuals because of the fact that they are completely misaligning their circadian health because of sleeping during the day when their body should be awake, getting light, right? And being awake at night when there's no access to that very specific an important range of natural spectrum that we need within daylight in order to keep our circadian rhythms aligned and going and working and functioning well together. So just modern society in and of itself has created this natural impediment to us maintaining proper health and well-being. And when we're not being educated on that, when we don't have the option to be educated on that, we only keep spiraling further and further into kind of health degradation. And that's part of, that's a huge aspect of why we offer these free community workshops, is to make people aware, to offer this education, to give tools and resources so that they're able to support themselves in ways they didn't even know they needed. Right until now. So I am so happy that you created the Circadian app. I am thrilled that we're going to be able to use it. Everyone, you can download the app off of Bastian's website. You can also download the app off of Light Vitality Group's website. When we go to our providers page, you'll see users, or you'll see application specialists, and that'll lead you to it. You can also go to the homepage underneath the workshop and click on the link that says Circadian Limited or Ltd. And you can download it from there as well. So I hope that you take advantage of this app. I hope you are taking advantage of the workbook, in which we are going to be walking through every day for the next 4 days of this workshop and filling in all of the blank spaces to keep you engaged and, keep you asking questions. With that said, do we have any questions at this time? All right, so I'll go ahead and we'll say that this is our Q&A period. Let us know. Do you have any questions? Are you interested in knowing anything specifically from myself or from Bastian? Like I said, day 2, 3, 4, and 5, we're going to be taking really deep dives into circadian health, lighting metrics that are important to circadian health, different types of environmental applications. Of course, as Bastian had touched on earlier, we're going to be talking about where you are in the world. right? Are you closer to the equator or are you further from the equator? That's going to make a difference in how much access to daylight you have. And seasonally and whatnot. So, and then day 4, we're going to be talking a lot about wellness ROI. And we're going to be discussing, again, Bastian, you touched on social jet lag and how critical, how dangerous it is to our lifestyles and our health and well-being, and how critical it is to know and address it, so that we're not falling ill to the effects of social jet lag, which happens so naturally. I think the statistic that came out recently was that over 80% of working individuals who have a 9-to-5 schedule, who live a day active schedule, wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night, over 80% of those individuals experience symptoms of social jet lag. Again, they have a day active schedule. Why are they experiencing it? It's because of our infrastructure. It's because of our social structures. It's because of our lifestyle choices and our environmental choices, our built environment specifically. So we're going to be talking about that during day 4 and day 5 of the workshop when we look at applications and wellness, return on investment, and wellness value of investment. So stick with us. Let's see, does anyone have any questions? They might wind up having some later. I don't see any popping up right now at this time. So Bastian, if they do have any questions for you at a later time, if they've watched it later in the week or whatnot, I'll let you know. And you think you could get back to us on that if we got any for you?
Sure. I think an important point to kind of follow up on, because we talked about the balance between damage and repair, that applies also to light. I know you're going to cover that at the workshop later, but just for people to get a rough idea around light, there's basically a balance between stress and repair, same as what happens within our bodies, or what should happen. So the lower wavelengths of light, the ultraviolet and the blue part of the spectrum, they are kind of the stressors. And the longer wavelengths, the red and the infrared in particular, are kind of the regenerative and repair kind of frequencies. So, and it's important to get a balanced spectrum. And it's interesting that in natural light and in sunlight, you have naturally always 50% red and infrared. So it's important to, and then if we look at what's happening with normal kind of white LED lights, they pretty much have a high spike in the blue and a little bit on either side, and that's about it. So it's basically just a stressor, which is great if you want to stay awake and if you want to spike your stress hormones and be productive. But if you do that long term, day in and day out, you literally disrupt your tissues and stress your tissues and cause more oxidation in the eyes and in the skin. And without repairing that has a big impact. And it's really interesting if you look at the I think it's about 1/3 of the world's population now is kind of has myopia.
Yeah.
And there's a reason with it. And I think the WHO predicted by 2025 half of the world's population will have myopia, and that's because of the lights kind of we're living under and living in, and because we don't go outside anymore and we don't get the repair and regeneration. And so it just to throw that out there for people to get a bit of a kind of 10,000 foot level of view on light and what it does just to the eyes is really important. And again, keeping that balance in mind. Yeah. That we need the repair if we want to be healthy. Really crucial.
Absolutely. And a big portion of that reparation comes from our immune system response, right? And being able to generate the proper red blood cell count, the proper white blood cell count, the proper T cell count. Again, all of that very contingent on our...
Which is driven by light, by the red light. Which is driven by light and regulated by light.
100%. And you talked about spiking those cortisol levels, right? We're not able to we're suppressing our melatonin too much. We're allowing too much release of stress and cortisol, which essentially is just suppressing our immune system, right? So now people are not only developing major health disorders like heart disease, like Alzheimer's, like obesity and certain metabolic disorders, right? We're also kind of compromising our systems to kind of smaller illnesses, bacterial infections, viral infections that our body just can't fight off because we're constantly suppressing our immune system by having too much stress. And we already get enough stress in our natural life, right? They say that the body was designed in order for, the fight or flight attack, right? The stress and melatonin, this balance of being awake and being asleep. Cortisol is so healthy for us, right? And we'll talk about this tomorrow, right? We were designed to run from the bear. We weren't designed to be taking, unfortunately for many organizations, verbal assaults from, bosses or coworkers or, constant deadlines and just so much stress, missing, having extracurricular activities. Now children, school-age children aren't just, doing their homework and going to bed. They have school sports, and then they have competitive sports, and then they, might have some other type of extracurricular outside of it. And then they have to do an additional 4 hours of homework and then another 2 to 3 hours of studying. And next thing they have only 4 to 6 hours of sleep available to them before their school day starts the next day, right? So we're kind of constantly putting our body at risk by, releasing too much of that stress hormone, suppressing our immune system, not giving our body the ability to repair. And we'll talk more specifically tomorrow, everyone, about some of the hormones that support that reparation process and what type of day to night schedule they have. Again, we're going to talk about circadian health and take deep dives so you really understand why this is important. And then, of course, why light is so important in maintaining it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This was session 1. It was your introduction of getting prepared for the Light Wellness Experience workshop, meeting myself, Regina, the CEO of Light Vitality Group. As most of you know, my background is in architectural lighting design. That's how I got into light and health specifically. I come from, I have a wide, kind of extensive background with kind of health concerns, my personal passion for light and health, and then coupled with my professional career, it just made sense to create the Light Vitality Group and start connecting with individuals like Mr. Groiss here, and bringing resources to you and helping you understand why this is also important and giving you a way to really digest and invest in these sort of lifestyle transformations. So thank you so much, Bastian, for joining us and for creating the Circadian app and letting us use it. I think it's a wonderful tool, and I think you offered a lot of insight and good conversation for today, and as a good kickoff to the event. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for all the work you do, and thanks for kind of speaking about light and bringing awareness to it. It's so necessary. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So any final remarks before we send off for the evening?
Well, it just becoming aware really a bit more of light, and particular just really the natural cycles. Just I think really for a lot of people, for me, it was the same. It's interesting where I probably hadn't seen a sunrise in, I don't know, 5 years prior to a few years ago. And since then, I've pretty much seen every sunrise. Yeah. So, and just the awareness, not just the beauty and the magnificence of watching a sunrise and how you're actually impacted by that on so many levels, not just physiologically, but just becoming aware of where you are in the day and where you are in the seasons. Yeah. To be just much more in touch with what's actually happening is probably the first step, and everything kind of flows from there.
Yeah, it's a good point. It is. It's very easy to lose track of your day in modern society. So hopefully we can help people get back in touch with nature and with their bodies, essentially, right? Yeah. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you yet again.
My pleasure.
And yeah, everyone, thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow on day 2 of the Light Wellness Experience Workshop. Remember to use your workbooks and follow your guidelines. Oh my goodness, we didn't actually go over the guidelines, which we are already 45 minutes into today. So I'm going to run through very, very quickly, everyone, right? So what to do, right? Again, we host this workshop. We start it on Friday so that you have the weekend in order to be able to figure out your space, to wrap your head around all of this information. So when you go in on Monday, you're ready to go. You're not thinking about how to apply this to your lifestyle. You already have been looking at things and pointing it out and saying, oh, I shouldn't be using that kind of light. Oh, that kind of light is really good for me, right? We want that for you. So let's go very quickly over the actual light wellness guidelines. Number 1, wake up and find a naturally well-lit space facing east between 7 and 10 a.m. We give you a wide range because you might be somewhere in the world. You might not be able to wake up quite so early. You might have deadlines. You might have to drop kids off at school, right? You might have an early morning meeting you got to go to. You might be an owl. Your body type, your natural chronotype might want you to wake up a little bit later in the day. Again, if you use the Circadian app, you can put in your location, you can put in certain lifestyle preferences, and you're going to get information about what sleep-wake schedule works best for you. So we give you a little range of wake up, get to a well-lit space of natural daylight between 7 and 10 a.m. If you're outside on a bright, sunny, mildly cloudy sky day, a minimum of 15 minutes, right? If you're outside and it's a dimmer, overcast sky, a minimum of 30 minutes, but if you can get 45 to 60, that would be great, right? If you're inside next to a big, bright, sunny window facing east or south, get a minimum of 1 hour by that window. And if you were inside in dimmer overcast window seat facing east or south, get a minimum of 2 hours within that area. Number 2, if you feel tired midday, try stepping outside for another 15 to 30 minutes rather than drinking a caffeinated drink or taking a nap in the dark, right? Keep bright midday snoozes under 60 minutes. Number 3, dim the lights 2 to 3 hours before whatever time you are trying to go to bed and keep them as low as comfortably possible, as comfortable and as safe, right? We're not saying turn all of your lights off, let it get pitch black, and then trip over your night table or your end table. We want you to be comfortable. We want you to be safe, but we want you to dim those lights as low as you possibly can and try to keep them below the eye plane for those 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. Number 4, turn off all overhead lighting after sundown and use only low-level lighting like table lamps, under cabinet light fixtures, step lights, and night lights. If sunset is within that 2 to 3 hour range of you falling asleep, close or drop your blinds to support room dimness, right? Those are your guidelines. Get bright light, and we've given you a couple of times, right? We talked about how timing matters, where you are matters. Are you outside? Are you inside? Are you getting bright light versus dim light? Are you getting light from overhead versus from below the eye level? Are you getting it for 15 minutes or are you getting it for 2 hours, right? Everything matters, and we're going to take deep dives into why that matters and talk a little bit more about those parameters over the next 4 days. So, use the guidelines, right? Make them your best friend, love them, live by them, make them your bestie. They are going to be such a resource for you as you transition to a healthy lifestyle under light. Download the Circadian app and figure out what preferences work best for you for your lifestyle under light. And you'll also get great tips on healthy eating schedules, healthy exercise schedules, and more. That said, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And as always, remember to live lighthearted. See ya.